turning nearly 80% of dry, rocky mountain terrain and thirsty fields into a gold mine of exports worth nearly $11 billion a year. Greece is running one of the most extraordinary agricultural systems on the planet. From cold-pressing olives from centuries-old trees into liquid gold, concentrating yogurt by straining out the whey, stringing and sun-drying Oriental tobacco leaves by hand, to meticulously scoring tree trunks to collect every teardrop of exclusive Chios Mastic across 24 villages, Greece is turning traditional craftsmanship and refinement into an agricultural machine that conquers the world. How do these small-scale farms, nestled among the rocky mountains of the Aegean, manage to produce goods coveted by the entire globe? Let's explore the journey behind Greek agriculture, from the fields and harvest seasons to the processing lines that carry its produce beyond national borders. Nestled on the southeastern edge of Europe, Greece has etched itself into human history as one of the cradles of Western civilization. The birthplace of philosophy, the Olympics, and marble temples that have stood firm for thousands of years. Yet, viewed from above, the country resembles a map fractured by mountains and sea into countless fragments, featuring approximately 6,000 islands and islets, of which only 227 are inhabited. It is precisely this terrain that means agricultural land rarely lies flat across vast, expansive plains. Roughly 5.3 million hectares of farmland must weave through narrow valleys, cling to steep slopes, or remain isolated across island regions. Instead of sprawling megafarms stretching to the horizon, Greece is sustained by about 600,000 farms, mostly family-run, with an average size of just 7 hectares. However, the more fragmented the land, the harder the Greeks have had to work to make every single hectare count. They preserve crop varieties tailored to each specific region, accumulate wisdom passed down through generations, and transform geographic origin into an integral part of their agricultural produce's value. If there is one tree that casts its shadow over the story of Greek agriculture, it is undoubtedly the olive, the liquid gold, of which up to 80% achieves extra virgin status, fetching prices as high as $25 per liter on international shelves. With roughly 170 million olive trees covering the country, Greece ranks third in the world in production, yet leads the globe in per capita consumption. But what makes olives here special goes far beyond scale. On Crete, ancient trees estimated to be thousands of years old still bear fruit to this day. As a result, in many traditional groves, the season begins with pruning away old and overly dense branches, allowing sunlight to reach deep into the canopy and boost photosynthesis. Among the varieties grown for oil, Koroneiki stands out in particular. Its fruit is small and highly drought-resistant, yet it delivers an exceptionally high extraction rate. As the fruit approaches ripeness, growers must carefully time the harvest to strike a balance between oil yield and flavor, since ripeness directly affects both. When harvest day arrives, the groves come alive with the buzz of handheld cones, branch shakers, and, wherever the terrain allows, trunk shakers, all working to shake the fruit loose. The olives are gathered quickly, handled carefully to prevent bruising, and rushed to the mill as soon as possible, because the moment a fruit leaves the branch, the quality clock starts ticking. At the mill, the olives are washed and then crushed, flesh and pit together into a thick paste. This paste is slowly stirred so that tiny droplets of oil can merge into larger ones. To carry the label "cold extracted," the separation process must be kept below 27 degrees Celsius. And to earn the name extra virgin, the oil must have a free acidity of no more than 0.8%, while also meeting a range of other chemical and sensory requirements. What's especially fascinating, though, is that with one of the highest shares of extra virgin production anywhere in the world, Greeks can enjoy this top-tier oil almost entirely at home, rather than having to wait on imports to be blended, as is often the case in Italy or Spain. Greek yogurt hasn't just won over women looking to lose weight. It has sparked a genuine revolution across the global dairy industry. With a market worth nearly $13 billion, what began as a Mediterranean specialty has grown into one of the fastest-growing segments of the fermented dairy industry. The secret behind that success isn't a secret formula, but an age-old technique. Removing some of the whey to increase the proportion of milk solids, creating a thicker texture and a more concentrated nutritional profile. In Greek villages, authentic yogurt has traditionally been closely associated with whole sheep's milk. The milk is typically heated to around 90 degrees Celsius, poured into small pots, inoculated with starter cultures, and kept warm to ferment. Within just a few hours, it sets into a thick consistency, while the milk fat rises to the surface to form its characteristic creamy skin, all without mechanical straining. Today, however, cow's milk accounts for as much as 85% of Greek yogurt production, simply because it offers a more consistent supply, lower costs, and greater scalability for industrial production. To keep that supply steady year-round, dairy herds are fed carefully formulated rations of hay, grains, silage, and minerals in balanced proportions. At milking time, each cow enters a dedicated milking area, where the teats are cleaned before the milking cluster is attached. The machine alternates between suction and release roughly 50 to 60 times per minute, allowing milk to flow steadily without placing continuous pressure on the udder. Once collected, the milk travels through a closed pipeline system, passes through filters and cooling equipment, and enters storage tanks before being transported by tanker truck to the processing plant. From this point, the early stages are much the same as those used for conventional yogurt. The milk is standardized, heat-treated, inoculated with starter cultures, and fermented. But the defining difference comes during concentration. A portion of the whey is removed using centrifugal separation or membrane filtration, significantly increasing the concentration of protein in milk solids. As a result, many Greek yogurt products can deliver up to twice the protein of conventional yogurt with less sugar while keeping you feeling full for longer. Fetching a farm gate price of up to $8.5 per kilogram, 3 times more expensive than ordinary tobacco. Greece's sun-cured Oriental leaf once dethroned raisins to become the country's leading agricultural export. The journey begins with tiny seeds sown in nursery beds. The seedlings are watered, fed with nutrients, and tended until their root systems grow strong enough to be transplanted into the field. At transplanting time, a tractor slowly tows a specialized planting rig down each row, while workers continuously feed seedlings into the planting mechanism. Each plant is then automatically set into the ground at even intervals. In some systems, water is even delivered right at the planting spot. What follows is roughly 2 to 3 months of irrigation, weed control, and nutrient management, during which the plant builds up multiple tiers of leaves. But once harvest season arrives, machinery gives way to human hands. The lower leaves tend to ripen first, so workers start at the base of the plant, picking each leaf as it reaches maturity, then returning again as the upper tiers come ready in turn. This uneven ripening rhythm can stretch the harvest out to a remarkable length. For the Katerini 53 variety in Greece, a single harvest has been recorded to last 46 to 52 days, nearly twice as long as a typical vegetable harvest. As soon as the leaves leave the plant, they're strung together into long garlands and hung on outdoor racks. Here, the sun becomes a giant natural dryer. Over the following days, moisture gradually escapes, the green fades away, and the leaves turn yellow, then amber brown, then finally amber. This direct sun-curing method is the defining hallmark of Oriental tobacco, and it's also the very factor that studies on Greek varieties have credited for their superior color, aroma, and flavor. Once the leaves are fully dried, they're taken down, gathered, sorted, and shipped off to processing facilities, where they're inspected, graded, and selected before entering the blending stage. However, Oriental tobacco contains almost no nicotine, far less than Virginia or Burley, so instead of adding body to a cigarette, it adds aroma. Just 10% to 15% in the blend is enough to define the character of the world's finest tobacco blends. In the south of the Greek island of Chios grows a tree that seems to weep only in the right place. Pistacia lentiscus grows scattered across the Mediterranean, yet it only produces Chios mastiha resin in exactly 24 villages known as the Mastiho Horia. Prized as white gold, this rare resin is edible and chewable, once serving as humanity's first natural chewing gum, and today fetches a retail price of up to $250 per kilogram. But obtaining these precious tears requires a long wait. A mastic tree typically doesn't begin producing resin until its 5th or 6th year, and only reaches peak yield after about 15 years. This makes it a craft passed down through generations, one where a single tree may accompany a family for a remarkably long stretch of time. The most distinctive stage begins in mid-June, when villagers carry out the trapezi, Greek for table. The name comes from the process itself. All dirt, weeds, and dry leaves beneath the tree are swept away, the ground is leveled, and a layer of fine white powder is spread over it. Seen from a distance, every tree trunk looks as though it's been set with its own round table, ready to catch every drop of resin about to fall. Come early July, the most eagerly awaited moment begins, as growers use a small tool called a kentatiri to make shallow cuts into the trunk and main branches, starting low and gradually working their way up. Each incision must be deep enough to let the resin seep out, yet never deep enough to reach the wood. Cut too aggressively, and the tree will dry up prematurely, potentially losing its ability to be harvested altogether. This process repeats in rounds throughout the summer, with cuts so small and evenly spaced that they're often likened to embroidering the bark. After roughly 15 to 30 days, the Aegean sun and wind harden the resin into clear, brittle white droplets. Yet the yield remains remarkably modest. A single tree produces only about 150 to 180 grams a year, meaning it takes roughly 6 trees weeping at full capacity all summer long just to gather about 1 kilogram of mastic. Through this meticulous process, all the harvested resin flows into a single destination. The Chios Mastic Growers Association, an exclusive cooperative representing nearly 5,000 members, which buys up the entire mastic supply harvested across Greece. There, the raw resin is washed, sorted by size and clarity, then refined into over 200 different products. From essential oils and digestive support capsules to chewing gum and skin protective pharmaceuticals, exported throughout the Middle East, Europe, and the United States. If olives and grapes are the seasoned veterans of Greek agriculture, kiwi is the fast-rising newcomer, picking up speed at a dizzying pace. In 2024, Greece harvested around 408,400 tons of kiwi, enough to place the country among the world's top 4 producers, trailing only China, New Zealand, and Italy. Behind that number lies a fairly fascinating biological puzzle. Commercial kiwi vines are strictly divided into male and female plants. Only the female vines bear fruit, while the male vines exist solely to supply pollen. Since these two sexes can't pollinate each other through wind alone the way many other plants do, growers have to actively play matchmaker, bringing in beehives by the crate load, and sometimes even using pollen-blowing equipment to make sure pollen reaches the right flowers at exactly the right moment. When harvest time comes, Kiwi still relies on human hands rather than machines. Workers move down each row beneath the trellises, gently twisting each fruit free from its stem. A motion that looks simple but demands real finesse, since a single hard knock is enough to bruise the fruit and degrade its quality during storage. From the orchard, the kiwis are sent straight to the packing house to go through automated sorting. Cameras and sensors scan each fruit for size, weight, and surface blemishes with a precision far beyond the human eye. One facility in Thessaloniki has reportedly reached a processing capacity of 30 tons of kiwi per hour, equivalent to nearly 10 kilograms of kiwi being scanned and sorted every second. At an altitude of over 4,000 meters on the roof of the world, where oxygen levels are only about 60% of those at sea level, arable land is scarce, and the growing season lasts just a few months, Tibet still produces millions of tons of food every year under conditions that seem almost impossible. This is more than a battle against a harsh climate. It's a vital mission to secure food for nearly 4 million people living in one of the most challenging agricultural regions on Earth. Now, join Agriculture Insight as we journey deep into the Tibetan Plateau, where every valley, grassland, and water source is carefully utilized to sustain an agricultural system capable of surviving at extreme altitudes, in freezing temperatures, and despite limited natural resources. For much of the Western world, barley is primarily associated with brewing beer or feeding livestock. But on the roof of the world, it is a life-sustaining grain, covering around 70% of Tibet's cultivated farmland and supporting an entire civilization through thousands of harsh, freezing seasons. To survive at elevations of more than 4,000 meters, this remarkable crop has evolved an exceptionally short growing cycle, reaching maturity in just 100 to 120 days. Because of this narrow window, harvesting must be completed quickly in late summer, before the first winter frosts descend across the plateau. Across the highland valleys, modern combine harvesters sweep through golden barley fields, cutting the stalks close to the ground while threshing the grain directly in the field. One of the greatest advantages of naked barley is that its kernels are not tightly enclosed by a tough husk like those of common barley. A light threshing is enough to separate the grain, allowing it to be processed immediately without the need for milling or dehusking. After harvesting and cleaning, a portion of the barley is roasted until it releases a rich, nutty aroma before being finely ground into a light brown flour known as tsampa. For centuries, Tibetans have carried a small wooden bowl, adding tsampa flour to butter tea for a quick and nourishing meal. The flour is skillfully mixed by hand with the hot tea until it forms soft, dough-like balls. Although simple, this traditional food provides a rich source of carbohydrates, helping people endure winter temperatures that can fall to -20 degrees. Meanwhile, another portion of the barley is brewed into beer through a process of soaking, steaming, and fermentation. Combining traditional techniques with modern production methods, the result is a fragrant, refreshing barley beer with a smooth, rustic flavor that is generally milder and easier to enjoy than the more bitter styles familiar to many first-time drinkers. Every July, the valleys of the Tibetan Plateau transform into a vast golden sea as rapeseed flowers burst into bloom, marking the beginning of the year's largest honey harvesting and rapeseed harvest season. Unlike rapeseed grown in the mild lowlands, Tibetan rapeseed thrives in an environment with dramatic day-to-night temperature swings and relatively low rainfall. As soon as spring brings warmer weather to the plateau valleys, farmers begin sowing the seeds. To withstand the intense ultraviolet radiation at elevations of several thousand meters, Tibetan rapeseed naturally accumulates high levels of antioxidants, a characteristic that contributes to the rich texture and distinctive flavor of the oil produced in this high-altitude region. By early autumn, when the seed pods turn dark brown, farmers race to complete the harvest before cold winds can scatter the mature seeds. With the mechanization rate of rapeseed harvesting now exceeding 65%, Tibetan farmers have adopted a highly efficient two-stage harvesting system. First, swathers are used to cut the crop and lay it in neat windrows, allowing the plants to dry naturally under the sun so the seeds can ripen evenly. Several days later, specialized pickup combines move through the fields, collecting the windrows, threshing the seeds, and bagging the harvest directly on site. This method not only minimizes seed losses caused by strong winds, but also greatly reduces labor compared with traditional hand harvesting. From there, the tiny rapeseed seeds are transported directly to local oil mills, where they are pressed into cooking oil. In addition to serving as a staple edible oil, rapeseed oil has long been used to fuel butter lamps in Tibetan monasteries, alongside traditional yak butter. Leaving behind the mechanized fields of the valleys, Tibet's most valuable and unique agricultural treasure is found on its steep mountain slopes. At the very edge of where life can survive, Ophiocordyceps sinensis, commonly known as caterpillar fungus, does not grow from seeds. Instead, it is the extraordinary result of a harsh winter-long interaction between a parasitic fungus and the larvae of ghost moths. As warmer air arrives around May and the seasonal snow begins to melt, the fungus is triggered to emerge from the ground as tiny, dark brown stalks resembling dried twigs. The harvesting season for this Himalayan gold lasts only 4 to 6 weeks before the fungus releases its spores. Once that happens, the caterpillar body beneath begins to deteriorate, causing the fungus to lose much of its commercial value. During this brief harvest window, tens of thousands of nomadic herders spread themselves flat against the cold alpine grasslands. Under intense sunlight and freezing winds, lying close to the ground is the only way to bring their eyes level with the grass, reduce glare, and spot the tiny fungal stalks, often no larger than the tip of a toothpick and nearly identical in color to the surrounding soil. Harvesting caterpillar fungus requires extraordinary precision. Once a specimen is spotted, collectors use a small, specialized digging tool to carefully loosen the soil, lifting the entire fungus together with the caterpillar body beneath it, without breaking the fragile connection between the two. Each specimen is then gently cleaned with a soft brush to remove soil before being naturally dried in the shade, helping preserve valuable bioactive compounds such as cordycepin and adenosine. Unlike ordinary agricultural products, most of the caterpillar fungus harvested in Tibet is destined for the luxury market. Although annual production is relatively small, this highly prized medicinal fungus accounts for more than 40% of the annual cash income for many Tibetan nomadic households. Beyond its traditional crops, Tibetan agriculture has expanded into its glacial rivers by raising rainbow trout, a cold water fish native to North America, at some of the highest aquaculture sites in the world. Although rainbow trout is widely farmed across the globe, with countries such as Chile, Norway, and Turkey producing hundreds of thousands of tons each year, the species has found a new paradise in Tibet. Fed by crystal-clear glacial meltwater rich in oxygen and with temperatures that rarely exceed 16 degrees Celsius, the Tibetan Plateau provides ideal conditions for cultivating this premium cold water fish. Descending to valleys below 3,000 meters, rainbow trout are raised in massive floating net cages on hydropower reservoirs, where they benefit from a constant flow of oxygen-rich glacial meltwater. Because the cold temperatures slow the fish's metabolism, it typically takes 2 to 3 years for them to reach market size, significantly longer than in lower altitude farming systems. However, the icy water, combined with a carefully controlled feeding program, allows the fish to develop evenly distributed marbling, producing firm flesh with a vibrant orange-red color and a clean, fresh taste, free of any muddy flavor. After harvest, the trout are immediately bled and transferred into an ice slurry chilling system to rapidly reduce their body temperature, preserving their freshness and quality. They are then transported in refrigerated trucks to processing facilities, where they are filleted, vacuum-packed, and prepared for distribution to the market. Returning to the Rocky Mountain slopes dotted with sparse forests, more than 400,000 Tibetan black pigs are raised in an almost entirely natural environment. With no barns and little human supervision, they roam freely across the mountains, often traveling dozens of kilometers each day. Their agility rivals that of mountain goats, with nimble legs, quick reflexes, and the ability to sprint across steep, rocky terrain to escape predators. Amazingly, despite reaching a market weight of only 30 to 40 kilograms, these pigs are capable of such endurance thanks to their highly developed heart and lungs, along with unique genetic adaptations. These evolutionary traits enable them to use oxygen more efficiently and maintain stamina in the thin air of the high-altitude plateau. Because they are free-ranged year-round, their diet is entirely natural, consisting of wild grasses, mineral-rich spring water, acorns, and a variety of alpine roots and herbs. This mountain-fed diet gives their meat its distinctive flavor and has earned them a proud local nickname, ginseng pork. Constant movement across rugged mountain terrain, combined with an all-natural diet, gives Tibetan black pork its exceptional culinary quality. The meat is firm yet tender, naturally marbled with fine streaks of fat, offering a rich, buttery flavor without being greasy. It is also prized for its high levels of amino acids and essential trace minerals. Unlike commercially raised pigs, a Tibetan black pig takes more than a year to slowly reach market weight. Harvesting is typically carried out in early winter, when the animals have accumulated the ideal amount of fat. After butchering, the pork is seasoned with salt and local mountain spices before being hung above traditional kitchen fireplaces, where it is slowly smoked over fragrant cypress wood for several months. As a result, the finest Tibetan black pork is rarely found in ordinary markets or supermarkets. Instead, it is often purchased directly from mountain villages by specialty food traders who supply high-end restaurants and customers in major cities with advance orders. Known as the ship of the plateau, the yak is far more than just livestock. It has been the foundation of survival for the Tibetan people for over 7,000 years, long before the ancient trade routes connected this remote highland to the outside world. The Tibetans have a saying, "Wherever there are Tibetans, there are yaks." They are regarded as the people's second lifeline, largely because of their extraordinary biological adaptations, a true masterpiece of evolution. Yaks possess exceptionally large lungs and hearts, a much higher red blood cell density than lowland cattle, and a double-layered coat that allows them to withstand temperatures as low as 40 degrees Celsius. To thrive in such an extreme environment, yak herding follows the seasonal movement of alpine pastures. During summer, as melting snow reveals nutrient-rich grasslands at elevations above 4,500 meters, herders drive their animals to the high mountains to build up energy reserves. When winter arrives, the herds are guided back to lower valleys, where they are better protected from heavy snowstorms and the harshest weather conditions. In late autumn, when yaks have built up their thickest fat reserves, nomadic herders begin harvesting a wide range of yak products. Milking and dairy processing are still carried out largely by hand using traditional methods. Fresh milk is taken back to mountain camps, where it is churned into butter and made into hard cheese that can be stored throughout the long winter. Compared with milk from commercial dairy cattle, yak milk contains significantly higher levels of fat and protein, giving it a naturally rich, creamy flavor without any processing or additives. At the same time, yak meat is cut along the grain, seasoned with salt and local mountain herbs, then hung outdoors to dry naturally in the plateau's strong winds and intense sunshine. Today, the yak industry has entered a new era thanks to modern logistics and advanced cold chain preservation. Meat, dairy products, and other yak-derived goods are no longer confined to remote nomadic settlements. They have become premium specialty products, sold in major supermarket chains and high-end markets across China's cities. Our first stop is the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region in northern China, where vast grasslands stretch to the horizon and winter temperatures can drop below 30 degrees Celsius, 22 degrees Celsius. These harsh natural conditions, combined with centuries of herding tradition, have made the region one of the world's most renowned producers of cashmere goats, helping China supply around 60 to 70% of the world's raw cashmere. As spring arrives and temperatures begin to rise, the goats naturally shed the fine undercoat they develop throughout the winter. This brief, seasonal window is the only time herders harvest cashmere. Instead of shearing the animals like sheep, they use specially designed combs to gently remove the ultra-soft down growing close to the skin. Each goat produces only about 150 to 250 grams, 5 to 9 ounces, of premium quality cashmere fiber per year, meaning it can take the fleece of 4 to 6 goats to produce a single high-quality cashmere sweater. After harvesting, the fiber is transported to a processing facility, where it undergoes dehairing, a specialized process that completely separates the fine cashmere down from the coarse, protective outer hairs. It is at this stage that Inner Mongolian cashmere truly stands out. Thanks to the region's extremely cold winters and dry climate, the fibers are typically finer, longer, and more uniform than those produced in many other cashmere growing regions. In addition, a higher proportion of the fiber is naturally white, making it easier to dye and allowing manufacturers to produce exceptionally high-quality yarn. Once selected, the pure cashmere down is thoroughly washed, carded, and spun into fine yarn before being woven or knitted into fabric. The fabric then undergoes softening and finishing treatments to enhance its texture and appearance, before being cut and sewn into premium scarves, sweaters, and coats, renowned for their lightweight feel, exceptional softness, and outstanding warmth. Lacking land, freshwater, and virtually devoid of natural resources, Singapore, one of the 4 Asian tigers, allocates less than 1% of its land area to agriculture. Yet it continues to systematically produce clean vegetables, eggs, marine fish, and a variety of high-quality agricultural products to feed nearly 6 million people. So how can an island nation, with such scarce agricultural land, smaller even than Central Park in New York, build a high-tech agricultural sector that garners worldwide attention? Right now, join Agriculture Insight to explore the agriculture of the Lion City, a place where every single square meter of land is leveraged through technology, turning inherent limitations into competitive advantages and serving as a model for many land-scarce nations around the world to learn from. Let's get started. With nearly 75% of its population of Chinese descent, alongside Malay and Indian communities, rice remains the most consumed staple food in Singapore. However, rather than allocating scarce land and water resources to paddy fields, the island nation imports almost all of its rice. Instead, its agricultural land is dedicated entirely to leafy greens, eggs, and aquaculture, food groups that deliver far higher nutritional value per square meter. And now, let's step into the vertical farms, where Singapore transforms old parking garages or warehouses into urban vegetable factories, producing up to 80% of the island nation's homegrown produce. Inside these enclosed spaces, the process begins with a fully automated seeding stage. Ultrafine vacuum nozzles, measuring only a few millimeters wide, pick up each seed and precisely place it into individual substrate cells. After just a few days in the nursery, the seedlings, now sturdy enough to grow, are immediately transferred to the cultivation racks. At multi-tiered farming towers like Sky Greens, aluminum structures can reach up to 9 meters high and accommodate 38 stacked tiers of trays. Automated lifting systems and robots move each tray to its exact position, transforming a tiny plot of land in the heart of the city into a high-rise field operating year-round. To replace sunlight, LED lights run for about 14 to 18 hours a day, providing the exact light spectrum plants require for photosynthesis. But light alone isn't enough. In Singapore, this model only truly works when it solves the vital challenge of water. Drip irrigation systems deliver nutrient solutions directly to the root zone, minimizing both evaporation and waste. Excess water is then collected, UV sterilized, and recirculated, saving up to 95% of this liquid gold compared to traditional farming. Thanks to this modern process, greens like bok choy, lettuce, and kale typically take less than a month to harvest. Vegetables are harvested, packaged right on site, and distributed to retail chains in just a few short hours. The truth is, Singapore never expected local produce to be cheaper than imported vegetables. Even though prices are often twice as high as those from Malaysia, China, or Australia, each bunch of high-tech greens is still considered a strategic investment, ensuring freshness and safety while maintaining a stable supply even when global supply chains are disrupted. If indoor hydroponic vegetables still require electricity for photosynthesis, mushrooms are virtually immune to that limitation. Lacking chlorophyll, they obtain energy by breaking down organic substrates rather than relying on sunlight. As a result, Singapore can make use of all kinds of enclosed spaces to cultivate mushrooms, from warehouses and old shipping containers to even bedrooms. Here, mushroom bags are stacked in multiple tiers to maximize space efficiency. Although they don't need light, they absolutely require sufficient water and humidity, two vital factors to prevent the mushroom pins from shriveling and drying out. In traditional farms, growers still have to spray water regularly to maintain humidity for each shelf of substrate bags. Meanwhile, in sealed growing rooms, automated misting systems combined with ventilation and air conditioning continuously maintain a humidity level of around 90%, helping mushrooms develop uniformly without water accumulation that could cause disease. About 2 to 3 weeks after fruiting stimulation, farmers harvest the mushrooms by cutting the clusters close to the base without damaging the remaining spawn. They then trim the stems, package them in trays, and transport them to supermarkets nationwide. What is truly impressive is that this model is also exceptionally eco-friendly by fully utilizing byproducts. After each harvest cycle, the spent substrate bags are fed into a shredder to be ground into a fine mulch. Instead of being discarded into landfills, they enter a composting system to become organic fertilizer for growing vegetables and ornamental plants, completing a perfect green circular cycle where not a single fragment of resources goes to waste. Leaving behind the quiet mushroom rooms enveloped in darkness, let us turn to a product even more vital to Singapore's food security: automated egg production factories. With just 3 domestic poultry farms, Singapore currently supplies about 30% of its national egg demand. At Chios Agriculture, one of Singapore's most modern farms, more than 300 million eggs are produced each year. Notably, because limited land forces farms to operate close to residential areas, every stage of the poultry farming process must meet strict standards regarding odor, noise, and disease prevention. Millions of hens here are housed in multi-tiered climate-controlled coops, integrated with 24/7 monitoring sensors. Furthermore, their nutrition is optimized with feed mixed with probiotics, which significantly reduces digestive odors while boosting their immune systems to minimize reliance on antibiotics. The moment an egg is laid, an automated conveyor system transfers it directly to the processing center without human contact. Upon arrival, automated UV technology eliminates salmonella bacteria and detects microcracks, while the system sorts, washes, and packages the eggs onto trays at a speed of tens of thousands per hour, producing ultra-clean eggs suitable for raw consumption, alongside specialty lines enriched with omega-3. To thoroughly solve the urban waste problem, all chicken manure must be collected via a multi-tiered conveyor system and sent to a centralized facility for drying, transforming into organic fertilizer to feed back into vegetable farms. It is a process free of noise and offensive odors spreading to the community, and most importantly, it minimizes the risk of external disease outbreaks. It may sound paradoxical that an island nation home to one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet, with over 100,000 vessel movements a year, can hardly farm fish at sea. The reason stems from a bitter lesson in the past, when outbreaks of red tide and oil spill incidents wiped out hundreds of tons of traditional cage-farmed fish overnight, forcing the island nation to reshape its survival strategy, moving the entire marine fish farming process into virtually enclosed, floating factories. On average, a resident here consumes up to 22 kilograms of seafood annually, well above the global average. With the country importing up to 90% of its food supply, seafood is not merely a familiar staple, but also the highest value source of fresh protein that Singapore strives to be self-sufficient in. At EcoArc, a floating farm worth over $4 million located in the Johor Strait, high-value fish species like barramundi, red snapper, and grouper live entirely in 4 massive steel tanks with a total capacity of up to 1,900 cubic meters. Notably, all seawater undergoes a strict closed-loop treatment process before entering the tanks: multi-stage coarse filtration, UV sterilization, and ozone aeration. Thanks to this technological barrier, the fish's living environment is completely isolated from pathogens, microplastics, and pollution caused by passing vessels. While open-sea aquaculture cages rely heavily on weather conditions and natural currents, the AI system at EcoArc automatically adjusts artificial current speeds within the tanks. This continuous water movement encourages active swimming, yielding meat as firm as wild fish while allowing stocking densities to be maximized. As a result, despite its modest surface area, this floating farm can yield up to 166 tons of fish per year, 20 times higher than traditional sea cages of equivalent scale. Do you happen to thoroughly despise flies? Intriguingly, if it is the black soldier fly, a disease-free, non-biting insect with an elongated body resembling a wasp, it serves as a strategic biological weapon for Singapore. Dubbed nature's cleanup crew for their ability to turn food waste into protein-rich animal feed, They are building an industry that drastically drives down the cost of marine fish production. Insecta, Singapore's first black soldier fly biotechnology company, is located right in the heart of the bustling Queenstown urban area, adjacent to HDB residential blocks, schools, and public libraries. Even though they are native forest insects that naturally avoid populated areas, the black soldier flies here are fully domesticated within a closed-loop system that is odorless and causes zero disturbance to the surrounding community. Inside space-optimized, multi-tiered breeding trays, millions of larvae act as biological processing plants for waste. During their 2 to 3 week larval stage, they eat relentlessly, capable of consuming food waste, weighing up to 4 times their body weight every single day. Their primary food source consists of byproducts from the local food processing industry, such as okara soy pulp and spent brewery grains, reducing organic waste volume by up to 70%. After pupating and emerging as adult flies, they live for a brief period of just 3 to 7 days, just long enough to mate and lay eggs without biting or causing any harm to the surrounding environment. While drying insects for livestock feed is common in many places, Singapore pushes biorefining further to close the loop on its circular economy. The extraction line recovers 2 high-value compounds from the black soldier flies, melanin and chitosan, which are used to produce biodegradable food wraps. Meanwhile, the protein and fat are processed into animal feed powder, and the frass is collected as organic fertilizer for vegetable farms. At our first stop, we arrive in Las Pedroñeras, the garlic capital of Spain, which supplies around 38,000 tons of premium purple garlic each year. From an arid region, purple garlic has transformed the fortunes of Las Pedroñeras, turning it into one of Europe's largest garlic-producing centers, and creating an industry worth more than $70 million annually. Here, the garlic planting season usually begins in early December and lasts until around mid-January. Before planting, healthy bulbs are cleaned, separated into individual cloves, and carefully selected, because each clove acts as the seed that will grow into a new garlic plant. In the fields, garlic planters move along straight rows while carrying a large hopper above. Inside, a metering disc system separates the cloves one by one, guides them through delivery tubes, and drops them into furrows opened by the planting unit. Directly behind, press wheels close the soil over the cloves, keeping them at a depth of around 4 to 6 centimeters, with planting densities reaching nearly 200,000 plants per hectare. By late June, as the fields begin to turn yellow, the garlic harvest in Las Pedroñeras enters its peak. Instead of using large self-propelled machines capable of digging and collecting the garlic in a single pass, as is common in the United States, farmers here still prefer smaller harvesting machines that are better suited to local fields. First, the digging blade moves beneath each row to cut the roots and lift the entire garlic plant from the soil. Immediately afterward, rotating blades neatly trim the stems and leaves, before gently placing the bulbs back onto the field in even rows, rather than loading them directly into a storage compartment or transferring them straight onto a truck. This time spent under the sun allows the bulbs to continue drying naturally, reduces physical damage, preserves the purple outer skin, and helps maintain their attractive appearance. After several days of field drying, the garlic is collected and transported directly to the processing plant, where clinging soil, dried roots, and loose outer skins are removed. From there, each bulb is sorted according to its intended use. Round, uniform, visually appealing bulbs are kept whole for premium packaging, while garlic intended for further processing is completely peeled. Spanish purple garlic is known for its purple clove skin, strong aroma, and intense spicy flavor, and it is often priced around 10 to 20% higher than ordinary white garlic. Leaving the garlic fields behind, Our journey continues to Huelva, the strawberry capital of Spain. Thanks to its mild Atlantic climate and well-drained sandy soils, the region produces bright red strawberries with a sweet aroma and high export quality. In the 2024 to 2025 season alone, Huelva harvested more than 10,000 tons of strawberries, accounting for around 95% of Spain's total production. In Huelva, strawberry cultivation begins with healthy young plants, placed by hand on raised beds covered with plastic mulch. Around February, when the first berries turn bright red, the harvest season officially begins.